Thank you to New Mexico Secretary of State Maggie Toulouse Oliver for making time for us in your busy schedule.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we want to talk about some of the voting reforms that you and Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham have put out. Big picture, what is the problem that you're trying to solve here?
So, big picture, what this legislation is trying to do is trying to send a message that there are still barriers to the ballot box. Even here in New Mexico, where we have wonderful voting laws, we have one of the best election administration processes in the nation. We're in the top 10. We do fantastic work here, but there are still people and places where it is hard to cast a ballot. And so, the purpose of this legislation is to say, look, in this time where we are seeing voting rights being rolled backward in many places across the country, and in this time where we're seeing our Congress unable to come together and address some of these important issues, we are going to take the lead here in New Mexico to move this legislation, this kind of legislation forward.
So, talking about barriers to the ballot box, can you give us some specific examples of those barriers?
Yeah, sure. It's really hard in a lot of our tribal communities and rural communities to get your mail timely at your home address to make sure that so if you're voting by mail, to get that ballot timely, to mail that ballot back and make sure it's received timely. We're trying to address that in some of these provisions. It is hard for people to register to vote who don't already have a driver's license or state ID here in New Mexico. And, I think it's a very popular notion that pretty much everybody has one of those things. That's an otherwise eligible citizen, but that's not always the case. I mean, we have elderly folks and people with disabilities and, people who just do not, for whatever other reason, have an ID. So we want to reduce that barrier for them. And, one of the biggest challenges for our democracy is having more young people participate. And why that's a challenge and why it's important is because the future of our democracy depends on our citizen participation. We know that voting is habitual. The younger folks get registered and start participating in elections, the more likely they are to be lifelong voters and contributing citizens in that way.
So one of the perhaps the most controversial elements that you've got here is lowering the voting age to 16 in some cases. And so is what you're saying, that it's like a gateway drug to voting? Like you want to get them while they're teenagers and get them hooked?
Yeah, yeah, and what a great gateway, right? We have a lot of negative ones. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think, we have a generation of high school kids right now who are incredibly engaged and incredibly aware about the world around them. And one of the things they are incredibly aware of is the fact that, school boards and decisions that are made at that level have a really meaningful impact on their daily lives. Whether it has to do with whether or not they wear masks to school or can even physically go to school or not. If members of the trans and queer community, whether or not they can feel comfortable in their schools. Folks who are concerned, kids who are concerned about school, guns in schools and violence at schools. These are big decisions that impact them every day. Many of them have jobs. They're paying gross receipts tax. They're helping support their families, and so it really, I think, would be meaningful for them to also have a say in these kinds of elections. And again, get them to, start becoming these, habitual voters and these, participating members of society as they move forward in life.
Now, in terms of expansions in this way, one of the elements here is giving voting rights back to felons after they've been released from prison. Um, what's the argument for that?
Well, it's a couple of things. First of all, right now we have a law on the books that says once you've completed the terms of your sentence that you automatically have your voting rights restored. The problem is it's not working automatically. The way the system works between the voter registration rolls, the Department of Corrections, and the judicial districts, that information is not working the way that it should. We have a lot of people who should automatically have that right restored who are having to jump through additional hoops after they complete the terms of their sentence. So that's number one. Number two, for many people, to complete the terms of your sentence, there are fines and fees still to be paid. And in this country, we call that a poll tax. If you have to get out a checkbook and make a payment in order to be able to vote, that is unconstitutional, and that's a problem. So what we're trying to do with this legislation is not only get rid of the constitutional issue, but streamline the administrative process. If you are incarcerated for a felony, you can't, you are losing, your rights. You're also incarcerated, right? So you can't move freely about society, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're out and you're trying to get your life back, get back into society, and hopefully, we don't want these folks to reoffend and go back through the system. And the more part of society they feel, we know the evidence shows they're less likely to do that. And being a voter is part of that process.
In terms of things that we know from, say, social science research, uh, young people skew Democratic, they lean more liberal, felons, Native voters, a lot of the groups that you're talking about expanding access to are people who historically vote Democratic. And plus straight party ticket voting, we know you can make the argument, Republicans would say, oh, this is an obvious giveaway from the Democratic Party leadership to these down ballot candidates that nobody's ever heard of. All people have to do is push Democrat at the top and boom, everyone gets elected. No one on the city level or county level is ever going to get elected, no matter how independent or moderate they are. Is this just a big Christmas gift, post-Christmas gift to Democrats?
I think that's a really cynical way of looking at it. And it's a highly politicized way of looking at it, because really at the end of the day, what we're talking about is giving options to folks who are our neighbors, our friends, people who live in our communities, and we don't necessarily know how they're going to choose to vote. Unfortunately, the way it's worked out in this country is that folks who have tended to vote more Democratic have been the folks who maybe are on the lower end of the economic spectrum, and who have more barriers and who have more difficulty in meeting the requirements or getting to a polling place, or living in a part of the state where it's easier to vote versus not. And so I don't necessarily think that that is the truth. And I also think that there's a really political lens that's being applied to this that begs the question of, well, if you think adding people to our process and expanding our democracy is bad for one particular political party or the other, I think that says more about the political party than it does about our democracy. I really think that when we look at voting, we need to look at the small d, right? Small d democracy. Who's participating, who's being allowed into the process, and who isn't. And at the end of the day, how they vote at the ballot box and what party they associate with should be the last thing that we're concerned with.
People are concerned about the integrity of elections. People are concerned about the security of elections. But we didn't talk about any of that a minute ago in your proposal. It was all about expanding access. Are you proposing anything in terms of election security?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is that we've been way ahead of the game in election security and integrity here in New Mexico. Since 2008, we've been conducting post-election audits. That's one of the main reasons we moved to an all-paper ballot system in 2006. We have tons of robust security built into the process already. One of the pieces of legislation that's moving through the election process this year, it's called the Election Security and Administration Bill. It's Senate Bill 6. It does continue to tweak our processes and improve them. One of the things it's going to do is require county clerks to do an audit of absentee ballots as they're coming in, just to make sure that that information that's on the ballot is accurate and correct. We're adding to our post-election process every single statewide election, not just the general election here in New Mexico. And we're going to ensure that every county has to audit at least one precinct. Right now, the way it works is there's a random sample of precincts, and maybe your county gets a precinct selected, maybe it doesn't. And so we're going to ensure that at least somewhere in every county gets audited, so that we can just sort of add to that process, that back end process of ensuring the accuracy and integrity of the election. There's a ton more I could talk you and I both sick, but those are a few of the things that we're doing in that bill.
Well, thank you for giving us this update on what your proposals are and on the research. We really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.